we'd recently gone through a merger, and we were, merging different board cultures, different board practices, and it was a great moment to question the whole Canadian traditional nonprofit board structure and systems that seem like they're carved in stone, but some things are written in law and some things are just written in practice. And it was a great opportunity for us to talk about it and think about it. I think the whole sector needs to think about whether we're using a colonial system, whether we're using a system that is old-fashioned and designed, a couple of hundred years ago, and how relevant is it today to what our members are thinking, what our participants are thinking, and what is the kind of organization that will serve the public going into the future.
Yes, I think that nonprofits need to reimagine governance, to have meaningful engagement, to make sure that the impact that they're having is speaking to a variety of diverse voices and not just as their own, and the traditional voices, the people that normally speak at these and normally get engaged in those processes. In order for us to be able to really do a good job, good work in the community, we have to work with the community and in a way that's meaningful and in a way that has the most impact. So I think TNG would like to explore this process, especially for governance, because that's such an important role for a nonprofit organization. So that's where you start at that point, and then you build that all the way through all your programs.
From my perspective as a board member, sitting on a board, you're quite removed from what goes on in the organization. And what's of interest to me and the board as well is trying to understand what decisions that we should be making at the board level, and then what decisions can be made by other people in the organization where it makes more sense for them to make those decisions. Where is it important to have that strategic kind of arm's length or quite, separate voice and view versus what's happening. I think it's very interesting to see how we can be kind of fluid with those and nimble.
The communities that we work with and change all the time, and I think that the way that we work with them needs to change and evolve over time as well. So I think it's a good way of looking at whether the rules of 5 years ago or 30 years ago or however long ago agencies start, looking at whether that still makes sense in terms of the governance structure, and whether there are ways to build on what we're already doing or to change what we're already doing to better do our jobs and to better meet our service needs.
But I think organizations today are facing some pretty tough things. There are transformations going on in some of our charitable sectors. So how employment services are being delivered, how childcare is being delivered, how home care is being delivered and care for the elderly. Now, some of it's good news, some of it's bad news. Some of it is a real challenge to the whole idea of nonprofits and charities. So boards do need to be, ready is too strong a word, but need to be thinking about these. And I cannot count how many retirements I've heard this year and changeover in leadership in the charitable sector and in the nonprofit sector. And that is always the toughest thing for any board, and is managing that kind of change. So we have generational change, we have transformational change, and we have awareness of equity and diversity change. And so there's big challenges on board shoulders. And so reimagining governance is a time to think, okay, so how can we make the best decisions, and how can we again be a movement for change, positive change in our community? And do we have everything in the toolbox to be a movement for positive change? Because now, maybe more than any time in the last 20 years, is a time when we need good boards and good governance.